There is a woman in a mid-size accounting firm in Columbus, Ohio, who drives a 2013 Nissan Altima with a small crack in the passenger side mirror. Her colleagues have quietly concluded she is probably underpaid. One of them mentioned last month that she should really negotiate a raise. What none of them know, and what she has never mentioned, is that she has $3.8 million in index funds. Her mortgage was paid off in 2021. She maxed her 401k every single year for 19 consecutive years. She could retire this afternoon. She is choosing not to, but the choice is entirely hers. The cracked mirror is not an oversight. It is a decision. Welcome to Decoded. If you have ever felt the pull to upgrade your car, your watch, your apartment, not because you genuinely need it, but because of how it makes you appear to people whose opinions you will forget in 5 years, this video is going to make you genuinely uncomfortable. And then it is going to make you significantly wealthier. Let's get into it. Here's the data that should reframe every financial decision you have made in the last decade. A landmark study by researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko spent decades surveying millionaires across America. Not the ones on television, the actual statistical majority, the everyday millionaires living in ordinary neighborhoods, driving ordinary cars. Their findings demolished every cultural assumption about what wealthy people look like. 80% of American millionaires are first-generation affluent, meaning they built it themselves with no inheritance. Half of them have lived in the same house for more than 20 years. And here's the number that stops people cold. The median price that millionaires pay for their vehicles is $31,367, according to the Millionaire Next Door research data. Now here's the contrast that makes that number devastating. An Experian automotive study found that 61% of people earning over $250,000 annually drive Hondas, Toyotas, or Fords, regular vehicles that blend into any parking lot in America without generating a second glance. Meanwhile, 8% of people earning under $100,000 own luxury vehicles. They're spending $60,000 on cars while earning $50,000 per year. One group looks wealthy, the other group actually is wealthy. These are rarely the same people, and that distinction is the entire financial education most people never receive. Ask yourself this right now. When you picture a millionaire, what do you see? What they are driving, what they are wearing, where they live. Your answer reveals exactly how thoroughly the cultural programming has worked, because the data says the picture in your head is almost certainly wrong. In 1899, sociologist Thorstein Veblen introduced a concept that explained more about modern financial behavior than most economics textbooks written in the century that followed. He called it conspicuous consumption, the purchase of goods and services primarily to publicly display economic power rather than for functional utility. His central observation was that people do not just buy products, they buy signals. Luxury brands are not selling materials or craftsmanship in any proportional sense. They're selling narrative. A $48,000 watch tells time with exactly the same accuracy as a $48 watch. The additional $47,952 purchases something else entirely: the ability to communicate status to a room full of people who are themselves trying to communicate status back. Here is the psychological data that should make this personal. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that people who primarily view money as a symbol of power and social status report significantly lower levels of financial satisfaction than people who view money as a tool for security and freedom. They spend more, they save less, they experience higher financial anxiety. And here is the precise irony that the study documented. The pursuit of appearing wealthy creates the exact psychological and financial conditions that prevent actual wealth from forming. Every leased luxury vehicle is a monthly payment that could not compound. Every designer item is shares of an index fund that were never purchased. Every status symbol has an opportunity cost measured not in dollars, but in decades of growth that never happened. A 2025 Empower research study found that 62% of everyday American millionaires, people who have already crossed the $1 million threshold, still actively budget, still shop for deals, and still actively avoid extravagant lifestyle spending. The habits that built the wealth are the same habits that preserved it. The display game is not a destination they arrived at after building wealth. It is a game they never started playing, which is precisely how the wealth got built in the first place. Here is an angle on visible wealth that almost nobody in personal finance discusses, and it's one of the most practically important reasons that financially sophisticated people choose invisibility deliberately. According to Javelin Research, cybercriminals targeted 8.1% of high net worth individuals with assets of $1 million or greater in the most recent reporting period. The comparable rate for the general population was 6.4%. Looking wealthy doesn't just cost you financially in the purchases it drives, it creates a measurably larger target for the people whose profession is taking what you have built.
The mechanism is what security researchers call a whaling attack. Unlike mass phishing operations that cast wide nets, whaling attacks are precision operations. Criminals assemble detailed profiles from social media, data breaches, public records, and open-source intelligence gathering. They use this profile to impersonate trusted advisors, private bankers, or family members, and extract sensitive information or authorize fraudulent transfers. The Federal Trade Commission reported that Americans lost $10.3 billion to fraud in 2023. Investment fraud alone accounted for $4.6 billion of those losses, with the most sophisticated schemes specifically targeting individuals whose visible consumption had publicly advertised their financial position. The woman driving the 2013 Nissan Altima with the cracked mirror is not a target. Nobody is assembling a profile on her. Nobody is impersonating her financial advisor because nobody assumes she has one worth impersonating. Her invisibility is not just a behavioral habit. It is an active security strategy, one that the financial industry almost never discusses because it does not generate advisory fees or product sales. Looking ordinary is free protection that no premium insurance product can fully replicate. Here is something that happens so gradually that most people never notice it occurring. When you upgrade your visible lifestyle, your social environment recalibrates around the new signal you are broadcasting. Drive a luxury vehicle and the expectation at dinner shifts. Wear designer clothing consistently and the assumption about who pays the bill changes. Move into an affluent neighborhood and the baseline spending of every social interaction quietly inflates. Research on social comparison theory published in Psychological Review found that status is fundamentally relational. It only exists relative to the perceived status of others, which means the moment you signal upward movement, you have joined a comparison game with no defined finish line and no natural stopping point. The practical financial consequence of this dynamic is substantial and almost never calculated. A 2023 analysis by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that households in higher income zip codes spend significantly more on visible consumption categories, restaurants, clothing, vehicles, than statistically comparable households in mixed income neighborhoods, controlling for income. The neighborhood itself changes the spending behavior. The signal you broadcast changes the environment, and the environment changes what feels normal to spend. Now here is the angle that most financial content ignores entirely. The person who maintains visible ordinarity while building invisible wealth preserves access to a wider and more authentic range of social connections. Nobody treats them as a resource. Nobody calculates what they might contribute before deciding whether to maintain the relationship. Nobody resents a perceived financial advantage that is not visible. The quietly wealthy person has something that actual displays of wealth actively destroy, the reasonable certainty that the people in their life are there for who they are, rather than what they have. According to research from the Millionaire Next Door study, high net worth individuals who maintained modest, visible lifestyles reported significantly higher relationship satisfaction scores than those whose visible consumption matched their actual wealth level. The invisibility is not social deprivation, it is social protection. Thomas Stanley's research introduced a framework that is more useful for understanding wealth building than almost any investment strategy, and it has nothing to do with market timing or asset allocation. He identified two behavioral categories that predict wealth accumulation more reliably than income: prodigious accumulators of wealth, PAWs, and underaccumulators of wealth, UAWs. The categories have nothing to do with salary. A household earning $50,000 per year can be a PAW. A household earning $700,000 per year can be a UAW. The spending behavior, not the income, determines the category. The formula for identifying which category you currently occupy is precise. Multiply your age by your gross annual household income. Divide by 10. The result is approximately what your net worth should be if you have been accumulating at a healthy rate. A 38-year-old earning $90,000 should have approximately $342,000 in net worth. If your actual number is significantly below this, you are under-accumulating, not because your income is insufficient, but because your spending behavior is consuming the wealth that your income should be generating. Here is where this gets genuinely uncomfortable. Stanley's research found that UAWs are disproportionately concentrated among high-income professionals, doctors, lawyers, senior executives, people who intellectually understand compound interest perfectly and behaviorally practice almost none of it. They understand the math, they just do not apply it, because the social environment of their profession creates relentless pressure toward visible consumption that justifies and normalizes spending that their income technically supports, but their wealth building cannot survive. The difference between a $35,000 car and an $80,000 car invested over 25 years at 7% annual returns is approximately $270,000. That is not the price of the car, that is the real price of the signal the car sends. Here is a practical and financially significant advantage of visible modesty that almost nobody calculates, and it operates across every major financial transaction you will ever make. Service providers, contractors, car dealers, real estate agents, and vendors of every kind calibrate their pricing based on perceived ability to pay. This is not speculation. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization documented systematic price discrimination based on perceived wealth signals, finding identical services were quoted at measurably higher prices when the customer displayed visible markers of affluence versus markers of modesty.
Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people in modern history, has explicitly noted in interviews that his modest appearance and unremarkable lifestyle gave him negotiating leverage throughout his career that visible affluence would have permanently eliminated. Nobody knew his financial position from looking at him, which meant nobody adjusted their price based on what they assumed he could afford. He received the same quote as everyone else. Across a lifetime of significant transactions, property purchases, business acquisitions, service contracts, that pricing differential compounds into a number that is genuinely difficult to calculate, but structurally impossible to ignore. The same dynamic operates in professional settings. Colleagues who perceive you as comfortable but not wealthy treat you as an ally rather than a resource. Clients who perceive you as modest do not resent your fees or assume you are overcharging. Bosses who perceive you as financially motivated remain confident in your commitment. The moment visible wealth enters a professional relationship, the calculus of every interaction subtly shifts. The quietly wealthy professional maintains the negotiating position of someone who needs the work, while possessing the financial security of someone who does not. This combination, appearing to need the deal while being entirely able to walk away from it, is one of the most powerful positions in any negotiation, and it is available exclusively to people whose visible lifestyle does not broadcast their actual financial position. Here is the calculation that makes every previous argument in this video concrete and undeniable. Two households, both earning $200,000 per year. Same income, same city, same opportunities, same tax bracket, different relationship with visibility. Household 1 saves 25% of gross income, $50,000 annually, in a diversified index fund portfolio at 7% average annual returns. They drive a reliable used vehicle. They live in a neighborhood where they are not the wealthiest person on the block. They wear unremarkable clothing. They could be anyone. Over 25 years, their $50,000 annual contribution at 7% compounding generates approximately $3.4 million. Household 2 saves 5% of gross income, $10,000 annually, while spending the remaining $190,000 maintaining a visible lifestyle consistent with their income. Luxury vehicle lease, $1,400 per month, premium apartment in a visible neighborhood, regular fine dining, designer clothing and accessories, social media presence that documents the consumption. They look exactly like what everyone imagines a $200,000 earner should look like. Over the same 25 years, their $10,000 annual contribution at the same 7% generates approximately $680,000. Same income, same 25 years, same market conditions. $2.72 million difference. Household 1 has options that Household 2 cannot afford to imagine: the ability to retire early, the ability to walk away from work that is no longer meaningful, the ability to absorb any financial shock without restructuring their entire life. Household 2 has memories, luxury experiences, a wardrobe of items most of which they no longer wear, and a retirement account that requires them to work until their body forces the decision. Both households made choices. Only one made choices that compound. The cultural programming that drives visible consumption starts early and reinforces constantly through every medium that profits from the behavior it encourages. Television dramatizes wealth through visible consumption. Social media algorithmically amplifies curated displays of luxury while making invisible wealth structurally impossible to post about. Advertising promises that specific purchases will transform identity and generate the social response the buyer is actually seeking. The message across every channel is remarkably consistent. Successful people look successful. If you want to be perceived as having made it, you need to display that you have made it through what you consume. This message is demonstrably false. The data on actual millionaire behavior disproves it comprehensively, but its effects are financially catastrophic for the people who internalize it because they spend their entire income maintaining an appearance of wealth while systematically preventing the actual formation of it. They arrive at 55 with a closet full of luxury goods, a lease that renews automatically, and a retirement account that cannot sustain the lifestyle they have built, let alone the lifestyle they have been displaying. The cultural tide is beginning to shift. Bain & Company's 2024 Global Luxury Report documented a meaningful movement toward what they termed quiet luxury, the preference for understatement, craftsmanship, and longevity over conspicuous branding. A 2024 Accenture consumer survey found that 52% of global shoppers now prefer content from influencers showcasing practical choices over aspirational excess. The stealth wealth aesthetic, wealth that requires knowledge to recognize rather than a logo to broadcast, is becoming a form of social currency among people who have genuinely thought about what they are optimizing for. The Nissan Altima with the cracked mirror is not a failure to achieve. It is a choice about what achievement actually means, and the $3.8 million in index funds is the compound interest on that choice made consistently for 19 years.
Here is what every piece of data in this video points toward. Wealth is not what you show. Wealth is what you keep and what you let compound while everyone around you is performing. The people who build extraordinary net worth over ordinary careers share one behavioral characteristic more consistently than any other. They opted out of the visibility game early enough for compound interest to do something genuinely life-changing with the money they kept. The woman driving the 2013 Nissan Altima with the cracked mirror did not become wealthy despite the car. She became wealthy because of everything the car represents, a consistent and deliberate choice to let her money compound instead of communicate. Her colleagues feel sorry for her. Her index fund does not require their sympathy. Now here is something worth knowing before you leave. The wealth gap between the two households in today's video, $2.72 million over 25 years, was not built through a single dramatic financial insight. It was built through 10 specific behavioral habits so boring and so unsexy that most people skip them entirely while waiting for something more interesting to show up. In our next video, we break down all 10 of those habits, with the exact data showing what each one compounds to over a lifetime, and why the people running them quietly become extraordinary while everyone around them is still looking for the exciting version of this. That video is linked right here. Watch it next. If this gave you a new way of thinking about money, subscribe to Decoded. Every week, we break down the real mechanics of how money actually works, backed by data, not opinions. No fluff, no filler, just the truth about a system that profits from you not knowing it. I'll see you in the next one.